Hello and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today we're going to be talking with Andrew Dings from Anatomy Physiotherapy in Ottawa, Canada, who has had growth over four physiotherapy clinics, three of those in the last 3 years. And Andrew is not only just a physiotherapist, he's also an educator. And we're looking forward to hearing how he's brought that into his practice. He founded Anatomy Physiotherapy in 2019, and within the last 3 years, he's grown it to 4 clinic locations in Ottawa, Canada. And so he's going to talk to us about his growth journey, his phenomenal marketing results, what he's done with teaching and education as an important part of his vision. So Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So I'd love to know more. I know you do a lot of teaching. You have a pretty impressive background in education and all kinds of manipulative therapy. How's that helped your practice?
More ways than one. So teaching, I do a number of fronts. So first one, I do teach at our local university here, the University of Ottawa, in the physiotherapy program. So that's teaching entry to practice. I do more teaching there in the vestibular therapy. So lots of balance, dizziness, vertigo type stuff. And then I also teach in the orthopedic division as well. So that's a national division for Canada. So those are already physiotherapists. So I'm also teaching those level courses. You have levels 1 through 5. I do level 2 mainly to do that. So I completed all of my levels. So here you have AOMT, we have CAMPT. So it's a member of the Canadian Academy of Manual and Musculoskeletal Physiotherapists. That's changed now. So you've got to achieve all of those courses first before you can start teaching in them. So that's actually how I started teaching, was in those courses. And then I've started at the university the last 2 years for that. And prior to university, I actually wanted to be a teacher, and I thought that I wanted to because my sister is a teacher. But my teaching kind of wants were more people that wanted to learn. And let's face it, in high school, they don't always want to learn. Whereas these ones, they're already physios or in the master's program trying to become physios. So I definitely like that because then the class is engaged and interested for sure. But the biggest thing is, like, I kind of think about it as patients as well. You get some people that as a clinician just start referring and referring and referring to you because you've done a good job. So that's kind of like my trunk, right? And then after that, they're going to provide different branches, and those branches will provide different leaves. It's kind of the same in the education system. So, maybe you had that mentor when you were in education or when you were a physio or an osteo or whatever you were coming up, and then that person had a good impact on you, then you're going to kind of grow from there. So if I can kind of be that trunk for those students, or whether they be already professionals or coming into that profession, then I know that I can also have effect on the community as that I live in as well, right? Because I can help so many people, 60 to 70 a week, and then build on that per year, sure. But if I can teach 40 people that also help 60 to 70 people per week, then that's how we're going to get growth in the community and in the physiotherapy community. And also that we're trying to do it with, let's say, an evidence-based or an evidence-informed practice at least. So then hopefully our community is, enjoying the results of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So mentoring and teaching the next generation, right, of physios and helping them get better results. And so that's really the key, right? Is if as a profession we can get better results, then people seek out more of that type of service. And then of course for your clinics, right? So can you tell me how you've been able to weave that education that you do into your purpose and vision for anatomy physiotherapy?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple of ways. I mean, the first thing though is that I also take that because that's the kind of broader spectrum of working with other physiotherapists. I mean, some of our clinicians, of course, take those courses, but then some of the up and coming ones too. But we also incorporate clinical education into our own practices, right? So we have a clinical education committee, and then I'm the main person that does it, and I go around to each of the 4 clinics, and we do it more in smaller groups to just work with the clinicians that I have, right? Now we have clinicians that have done similar experience to me, to residents or new physiotherapists, so it's across all levels, but there's always something to learn. And if I'm not teaching them something, they're teaching me something. And just kind of keeping that back into that practice. But from the perspective of doing that for outside of it, of course, having access to people that are interested in doing higher level education, then I think that attracting them to anatomy also, that does help.
Yeah.
And but then also making sure that they understand that while I do this out in the community through the university or through the orthopedic division, I'm also doing that as a clinic as well, right?
Mhm.
So that then, the education doesn't stop outside of the clinic. It actually is way more inside of the
Yeah. You
clinic.
keep elevating your practitioners, right?
Exactly, right. And then
Yeah.
that way, you start to become a pillar in the community of like you're
Mhm.
you're going to get good treatment and you're going to get ideally the best evidence-informed practice that you can or care that you can at that time.
Is that something that you like also promote internally as well as through marketing, just how much training you're doing with your team?
Yes, and you know what? I think that I don't know, I've done hundreds of interviews now, or at least 100 anyways, for clinicians to work with us. And I think that over 90% of them would ask, like, well, do you have any clinical education or continuing education opportunities or something like that? And, it's not just sending them on a course or something or them taking a course. It's like, yes, but we also go around and do many different topics. And largely we're an orthopedic based clinic, but we also do vestibular therapy quite a bit at different things, pelvic health. Depends on the clinicians that we have at the time, of course, right? But that just building those pillars and allowing them to attract them, and that's why like it doesn't end there for them, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
yes, come to anatomy, you're also going to get that education there to kind of build your own practice and your own
So it's
education.
it's twofold there. One is how you've built that to work with and attract also top talented therapists who want to grow, right? Have that attitude and probably help with retention at the same time, right? Because it's purposely built there. And then I would say too, like it seems like for new patients and attracting new patients, people want to go where there's the best, right? I want to go to the best, specialist and to help me with my pain or problem. And so if you're promoting that, I think there are clinics that do a lot of continuing education or training with their practitioners, but they don't necessarily promote it very well. And then your patients don't know, is this the same as everywhere else, right? And so has that been something you focused on in terms of your marketing and promotions?
A little bit, right? But I think that that would come in more where like patients see like, oh no, like I'm blocked off, or oh no, that's for clinical education. That's
Ah,
for
okay.
why it is, right?
Yeah.
That's how we do it. We do a block schedule approach for everything actually. But when
Hmm.
there's something there, it's just this is blocked off. We're going to do an hour. We're doing it every month. There's just no questions. Like that's when it's happening.
That's
Um,
great.
some of the patients obviously closer to that one definitely
Yeah.
see it, right? But that's another idea. We also could use that to funnel other patients, right? Because we definitely do like
Yeah.
you can tell, and everybody has different experiences, and some are good, some are not less than ideal for them. So we hope that they can experience the good from anatomy.
So is that a successful action for you then, making sure that there's always a certain block time each week or month for training or whatever it may be there?
Yeah, it's just it's an action thing that we're doing all the time. It's actually put in place like I guess half the time. So about 3 years ago, and maybe we'll talk about it in the podcast. But there's different things, there's ups and downs that clinics go through, and when you're thinking about well, how are you going to build your practice? What are physiotherapists or healthcare practitioners? We have massage therapists as well. What are they looking for in a clinic, right? And do we provide them? And if we don't, then is that why they're not coming with coming on or something like that? So largely, since we've changed that, we haven't had that problem.
That's great. I mean, that makes total sense. It's something I did too when I had my practice, was that there was always, like, we called it like Wednesday rounds, if you will, right? Like in the hospital. But basically there's a set time every single week for us to get together, just clinically, collaborate, bring a difficult client case or something like that. But I think if you, for our audience out there, if you bake into your schedule, because it's not all about how many visits you can churn out, right? It's really, you want to keep your staff happy, producing and getting amazing results so you can have word of mouth, and then retain them, right? And so if you have baked into the schedule, like you have education times and collaborative times, you're going to get so much more out of your team and staff, and retention of it. So it's fantastic to hear like that's something you put in 3 years ago and it's worked so well for you.
Yeah. And the other thing that we I mean, we always had, but we've largely put there now that we have that kind of committee, and then we say, okay, but like I do most of it. They can reach out to me at any time as well, right? So that part for education, that's a no question block kind of thing. If we do something like rounds or anything like that, that's you send me a message. Each of our clinics have a different group chat, right?
Okay.
And then we also have an all clinician chat, right? Largely that one really works for like community things, so either events or social things like that, but so that's good for the clinicians as well. But also sometimes they will put a few things of like, hey, do you have someone that could do this, or do we have anybody in our clinics that does it? If not, can we refer somewhere, something like that? So that's good. But then they'll also ask me, hey, do you mind chatting about this? And some of them come to mind of one over the summer, and it's a Friday night, 7:30 p.m. and like, hey, do you mind chatting? Like, is that okay? I was free, so I always say like, you got to message me, and if I'm free, I'd rather do it right away, right? And it was for a patient that was, are we sending this person to the hospital or are we not, right?
Mhm.
And we had chatted about it. We came up with a plan, and the plan was to actually get them investigated, and it turns out that they had a flare up, but the flare up was not because of something like they ended up running a half marathon, all kinds of body aches, pains. Won't tell all the details there, but the person ended up having and not being diagnosed with before a multiple sclerosis, right? So we're trying to pick these things out in the cases like, well, this is what's going on. The doctor puts you on an anti-inflammatory, but you're getting worse. You're coming back with different paresthesias all over the place,
Mhm.
and so I was like, no, you need to send this person, and it's tough because they've seen their primary healthcare practitioner, but
Mhm.
that's
Yep.
okay, and it's fine. Like they're overworked sometimes, and just here in this case, you've got to be an advocate for your patient, right? And I'm going to help you, and I'm going to listen to what you've got to say, and then we'll come up with a plan. And in this case, I would say it's largely more just like you need the extra little push to be like, you already made that decision.
Mhm.
I agree. So, go
Yeah.
for it. So that was good. But that's with a clinician that's, not quite 2 years experienced, right? So they haven't
It's
experienced
great
it.
that they have that sounding board too, like because I think that's it sounds like you've really focused on this too. I really would like to know more, but you've created more communication within the therapists themselves, the healthcare practitioners, so that they can collaborate. And that's the key for retention too, when they feel like they're part of a team and can really work with one another, ask advice. So and especially since you've got multiple locations, do they all, like you said, you had online chats for each one, and then they have like a collaborative one?
Yeah, with everybody. So we kind of decided to like divide it between the certain ones because our clinician, like, it's probably a 35, 40-minute drive from our furthest ones east to west, and then in between, right? Now they're not quite just exactly east to west, so it's like roughly 20 minutes took in a little zigzag there. But the other thing is that obviously I still work clinically and I can't do all of it. So we actually, uh, yeah, just over 2 years now, almost three, I guess, 2.5. You can see we had a little revamp 3 years ago. But we've got clinic directors at two of the locations, and I do have two business partners in the other two. So they also know that they can chat with those therapists as well. And, all of those have good knowledge, lots of course taken and all that stuff. So they absolutely ask them questions all the time, right?
That's fantastic. What kind
Because
of what kind of system do you use for the collaboration?
for chats,
Yeah.
I guess I can shout out. It's just WhatsApp, right?
Okay.
So we used to use it. Well, we could have used a different system. We just decided every clinician pretty much had it. So
Hmm.
let's just use that. I don't think it really matters the platform you use, right? But I think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's like I would largely say that was a big thing for the clinicians, right? Like, to have something where we can just do things, or even here, like we actually have. So once a year we do a therapist meeting. At one time it will be a retreat, but we do a therapist meeting in the fall, and we do a mid meeting in the spring, and then we also do a holiday party, or like the three big things that we do. But it happens. It's actually on Saturday, and today's Thursday, so in 2 days we're doing that. But I can just put a message and just reminder 10 o'clock. It's where you are, and I think it's just a different form than just seeing an email or getting those streamed, and then you have different reactions to those. They're putting their emojis on. They're like, "Oh, are you going to do this, or what are we doing?" And it just gives them a little something else, right?
It's
And
huge.
I
Yeah.
didn't have that, and kind of
Yeah.
have now. It's like, oh, this is kind of like
Yeah.
neat, right? So it's just different, and it has changed this is my 15th year of practice, and every few years it kind of changed, and along with the world, like technology has changed since then. What they want versus what I wanted were a lot different, and just got to try to stay with updated with that stuff. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of the, it's something that I've seen a few clinics doing that. I'm curious if there would be a lot more, but some of the ones that I've talked to really don't have that necessarily in play or the way that you've done it. I think that's something that's so powerful. It's something that we do at Practice Promotions as a company. We have like 75 employees and they're all over the place, right? And we do get together a few times a year, which I think is again critical. Like it's a cost, but it's well worth it. I mean, it's like it really makes a huge difference in collaboration. But having that, systems in place where people can converse, right, and chat easily, and then there can be group celebration and then group collaboration. So whether that's WhatsApp, Slack, we use Ring Central with our phones and messaging. Like it's whatever system you're going to use, but basically having a process, especially if you're multi-location, right, where people don't feel like they're distant from that other location. They're part of this bigger group, and that's phenomenal to hear what you've made happen there. I think all clinics should operate like that. So obviously that's one fantastic process system that you put in place for operations. I'm curious, what other systems have you put in place, like say over the last 3 years as you kind of grown, like for let's say like your front desk?
um, I think that I guess I would say like for front desk, we kind of revamped that to change like front desk. If you look at that, it's probably the most important aspect of your clinic, right? It's the first voice that you hear. It's the first face you see when you're going in. We're still an in-person business, right? It's not. It's yes, we can do virtual. We did that throughout COVID times and all that stuff. Do we still offer it now? Of course, but there's one or two that we have. I'm not even going to say a month anymore, right? I'm going to say a year. So it's not a large part, right? Doesn't mean you can't do that, just not the way that we operate. But how do you have that engaged yet? They're not like we've got to train them. They're not professionals like therapists or something like that, right? So we actually did change how we train them because before it's like, 3 or 4 days of training, aka going with someone else that's already been there, and then here you go and let's see. And that wasn't working the best. So what we actually ended up doing was changing things to have different levels. So there's 3 levels now. So you've got your entry level front desk. So we call them client services representatives. Then at each clinic, we have a coordinator, and the coordinator is basically the main daytime person. So typically working that 40-hour shift a week. I mean, we're open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we've got
Mhm.
13 hours there. So one will typically do 7, the other one 6, sometimes 7.5, 5.5, depending. Um, and so they're kind of taking care of those ones. And then we also instituted a manager for those. But to make sure she also has stuff to do, she also helps mainly the partners, right? But the clinic directors as well, of kind of what's going on. And having that tiered structure has really helped, right? Especially for me to not have to be dealing with those things, but also giving them the like, okay, I can do this. Okay, and then this is who I'm going to ask. And then, okay, this is what happens. We have a whole operational. We don't use the binder as much anymore, but we did in the beginning. But it's all digital anyways, right? But they've got all of that stuff. So all policies, procedures for different things. Things come up still now and again, but if it's a one-off, we're not necessarily writing it down. But if it's something that's happened a couple of times, we're just going to put that into a task kind of thing of like these are things that have happened. But keeping with that, trying to make sure that we also ask them for feedback. And that's largely why we do those 2 meetings. So the therapists get a chance to talk to us about what policies, procedures, all that stuff on their end. Admins get that another time of year as well. That's obviously in person, face to face, but they can do it at any time too. But having that kind of system from an admin perspective has really helped. And then what we did was we changed it. And so we still do the first few days, like obviously that's this. And now we have an actual printed list that we check mark over, like we went over it. But you can check mark 100 things. I'm not going to remember 100 things either in 4 days. Like it's not going to happen. I'm lucky if I'll remember 30 or 40. And then, I at least have that stuff back there that I can look at. But in the following 4 weeks, we broke those out into 4 kind of categories, right? So like insurance stuff, motor vehicle accidents, phone calls and how to deal with them and what they're saying and different kind of things, right? So then that week, that's the focus. And then
Mhm.
either the coordinator or the manager is actually having a phone call conversation with you on one of the days that you're working to go over that again, right? So they've went over it, but now we're kind of double, triple checking. Do you actually know what's going on? We're going to do a unit with you because if someone isn't doing something well, I still need to make sure that did I teach them or did we as a clinic teach them well or correctly, right? And I don't expect you to know it after one time,
Mhm.
maybe even two. At three, we might have a chat, but we just need to make sure that we're doing the due diligence on our end in order to have success for them, right? Like if we don't give
Yeah.
them the tool to do that, and that can go for front desk or clinicians, that that's on me, right?
Yeah, I would say like you're completely like if you have a problem with your front desk, have you trained them well, right? Or did
Yeah.
they forget about something and come back to that first?
The top 10% of PT owners aren't just surviving, they're thriving. But what's their secret? Well, Neil Trickett's new Market to Grow book reveals how the top 10% of PT practices leverage marketing systems to simultaneously grow their new patients, attract top talent, and boost profit in their practice. You can learn from their secrets. Visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free copy of Market to Grow. Yes, you heard that right. We are shipping a free copy of Market to Grow to all podcast listeners who want it. Just visit practicepromotions.net/book to claim your free book. And now back to the show.
I'm curious because that's fantastic. You put so much effort there into your front desk, and you're completely right. Like that's one of the most important positions in the practice. And most people don't realize it's actually your sales. It's your sales position, right? They're selling coming for care. And then your therapist started the delivery, right? And then you get your marketing on the front end. So if your front desk is not well trained, if they can't control the arrival and scheduling of people and the passage of money, that's a whole sales function, right? So I'm curious on your end as you put these SOPs in place, as you trained, and you put attention on that, 2-3 years ago. Like, what was the impact of that for your practice?
Well, the biggest thing that we saw right away from those systems was less fall off, right? Because the fall off was happening not just from practitioners, but actually from the admins, right? And then actually working with practice promotions. So you get your stuff that's coming in off your website as a request, right, for physio, right? And then, well, what are we doing with it, right? Because if I'm being shown a number that we're getting X amount of conversions, right, then great. Now I can see something in front of me that I have, but out of those, how much are we converting, right? And that's by and large what's going on from an administrative perspective where we are, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm going to spend the money marketing this stuff and we actually do get results, then what else can I do, right? Because it could be at any level you're getting that breakdown, and then that's what we're trying to look at, right? So I'm working with people on your team, and then looking at that stuff and really looking at those numbers, and then okay, go back to my team. Are these numbers matching? Are they not? Oh, we're down. And sometimes you are, right? Or sometimes it's like, well, there's 50 here, and you've converted 20. Like that's not great, right? And I mean, the 50 aren't necessarily quality, but let's say 40 are and you're still converting 20, 50% isn't acceptable, right?
Mhm.
So what's kind of happening, right? And there's always little things that you can change. It's a challenge too, because it comes in and if that's an online referral, right? Then it's like, oh, well, we call, but then, if they did an online referral, then a lot of them want to do stuff online, right? They don't really want to talk to me. But then to explain like, okay, well, you can come in at this time, or this time on this day, I send the email and 2 minutes later someone calls, I book it. Like you can't really save that time forever, right?
Right.
If you have a lot of open space, sure, right? And that used to be a problem and it's not anymore. So how do you really get them in, right? So now we kind of say, okay, well, we're going to call them and if they answer, great. If they don't, we'll leave a message, then we're going to follow up with an email right away, right? And then that way we've communicated how they like, but if they do answer and we can get them booked in right away, well, then that's probably better for us, right? But we're doing both. And then the following day, we're calling but not leaving a message just to see if we get them. And then we're following up by email again. So then we're making sure that we're following up with those leads. If we're going to get them from the marketing team, we've got to make sure that we're following up with it as well. And that change was actually only this year, just that I would say a little bit more vigorous follow-ups with that, but also timely follow-ups with that, right? It's a quick game these days, right?
It
You don't
is.
have,
It's so
you don't have a day
you
to
don't.
get back to them.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Like,
People want instant gratification, right?
exactly.
And you're 100% right on that. We have to realize, like, as soon as someone signs up online or sends a chat or whatever it may be, it's like you got to be on. Like, someone's got to be on that as soon as possible, and you can't just like expect your front desk to call them one time and they're like, oh well, they never called back. No, people need like a lot of follow up these days, right? You got to call them, you got to text them, you got to email them, and do it like 7 times over before they actually like, okay, they're going to come back in, because they might be doing that at like 9 o'clock at night, right, on a Friday. And if they don't hear back till Monday, well, then that's a problem, right? So, but that's where we are in today's world, and I'm glad that you saw that you put a lot of work onto that. I can tell you one thing as a marketing agency for physios and PT clinics out there is that, we get conversations with clients. So like, hey, I'm not seeing results. Well, we pull up the stats, right? We look at the metrics, we look at the call logs, and you can see, well, we had this many leads come in this month, and let's look at your call logs. Oh, look, there's all these unanswered calls, right? And so then it's really, oh, well, maybe we need to look at the front desk. Are they overwhelmed, right? Do they have, the systems in place to call back quickly? Are they doing enough follow up? Are people falling through the cracks? And that's typically what we'll see. So I think it's that you put so much attention on that front desk is critical, because marketing can be going well and driving the leads in, but like the sales action at the front desk, if they're just not following up, then that's where you lose a lot of revenue.
Yeah, and sometimes, depending on what it is, we don't do it all the time, but we'll do little competitions or something and then like try to incentivize as well. There's a lot of things in marketing. Obviously, if you don't measure it, you can't really tell what's going on, right? And with the phone calls, that's one thing that like right off the bat, and that was one thing I already knew. So that's been right since clinic day one. You answer the phone no matter what, right? If someone calls in this day and age, they want something and they want it then, right? And at a minimum, you pick it up, say your name, the clinic name, that stuff, and then put them on hold, because you've got that. Like our clinics aren't built the way we've done it. Is they're like 2,000 square feet, all of them, just slightly under actually. So they're only really going to have 4 therapists on at a time, right? And if they're maxed out, but now that's kind of where we are, right? Sometimes there's 2, 3, but there can be 4. Or in a transition, it's still the same amount of patients that could be in there, because there might be 4 or 5 therapists on, but 2 or 3 are leaving and the other 2 or 3 are coming, right? So we get that they're getting a steadier line, at that half hour, an hour mark, and then that middle time, that's when they have to do their other stuff. But answering that phone is critical. If not, you at least put them on hold, and then you still have another line. So if that rings, you're still answering that, putting them on hold, and then going through and trying to get that as soon as possible. And if you miss it, then obviously if it's a blocked number, there's not a lot you can do, right?
Yeah.
But if it isn't, then I'm sorry, I was just on the phone with another patient. Can I, this is Anatomy Physiotherapy Clinic. Can I help you with something? And then they'll usually say like, they're probably going through the Google listing at that point, right? But if you catch them soon enough, then you might, have something, right? Or the other thing is, even with those ones that are a current patient, like I kind of want to know so I can tell the therapist so that person's going to be 5 minutes late, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that then whenever that's happening, I know like the therapist is going to come up to me anyways and say, where's Mary Jane? And it's like, well, she's on her way. I didn't let you know yet. Or if you didn't answer the phone, you wouldn't know. And then you're calling. It's like, oh, I tried to call. So phone has always been one of those things. And that's something that we do really well.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff, I would say more on the digital side, which is where a lot of it is going. Then we're just trying to make sure those systems are in place. But the phone's got to be, I would consider that low-hanging fruit, right? If the phone rings,
Absolutely.
answer it,
Yeah.
like, but it can be challenging. You've got, 3 people in line and you're trying to do all that stuff, but you still got to at least answer, put them on hold, and then get through one person, answer it, okay, get through another one, and most people, it's tough, but the person that's there is already there, right?
Mhm.
And they're less likely to not come back because you had to take a call or something. But you can also just see what the person on the phone wants, right? Like if I'm running late, it takes me 2 seconds. You're like, "Okay, cool, like I've got that." If you're a new patient, I want to just make sure I at least acknowledge that, maybe do that, but I got to get back to you. I can't leave you on hold for 10 minutes, right?
Right.
Because then
Yeah.
that's not a good experience there.
Yeah.
Not that I want to keep the person in front of me on, waiting that long, but they are already there, right?
Mhm.
So they're less likely to not come back.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point there that we are moving into ever more digital conversations. However, one thing I still see a lot, and from statistics across thousands of clinic locations that we work with, right? One of the things that we see is that phone leads are still 60% plus of the people coming in. So yes, you're going to get forms online. Yes, you're going to get online bookings, right? And you're going to get these, chats going on. And I think that especially for new people that are looking like for help, um, they're going to call in mostly, right? The majority of those people are going to call in because they want to talk to someone, they want to ask some questions, they want to learn, certain things, and it's hard to get off just like an online book. And I think once they're in your practice, they're going to do some more online booking to move, appointments around, things like that. But that new lead, I think, predominantly is still calling in. So, what you're talking about, where you're putting a lot of effort and attention onto the customer experience, getting that call in as fast as possible is so critical when it comes to getting new patients into the practice.
Yeah, I think with the stuff that we've been looking at with practice promotions as well is the large shift to, your mobile rankings and your mobile calls, right? Because I'm still young, sure, but like this is on a computer, right? And that's what I'm using. And that's where I usually sit to do that, on a desktop. But largely your marketing is actually from your phone, right? And so what they'll do is they'll look you up there, but then yes, they will call right from there and then see. And it's true, like I want to know if your practitioner does this, right? Or what do they do? So, we've had to make sure we train the front desk on certain conditions or certain things. So we have a grid actually, and the grid's getting pretty long because we're approaching 30 practitioners, but because the one's admin from one still needs to know what the other ones do. So it's bigger for the ones that they do, but they've still got it for everyone else. So, does this person treat TMJ or do vestibular therapy or do pelvic
Yeah.
health or do concussions? Like, I need to know, because I need to know that I can't book that, you've got 7 practitioners you can book patients with.
Yeah.
Well, which one does what? Because that's key. And then if I mess that up and I call and say, "Hey Neil, I'm sorry, like I booked you with this person on Tuesday and it's Monday, but this person doesn't do this. So the next available time I have for that is in 2 weeks." But if I had it known a week ago when I booked you, I could have had you in this week, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I didn't tell them that, but it's, that's a huge thing of where, like, it doesn't matter how good your back staff is. Front staff isn't getting those people there.
Right.
That's a challenge.
That's really cool too. It's like, so that I'm thinking through with that, and you're saying what you've done is actually helped the front desk have an understanding of who specializes in what. And a lot of times it's okay in a smaller clinic because the front desk gets to know what therapists treat what, but as you scale, that's hard. Like that's a hard expectation for your front desk to know like who's best to match up with who. And I'm glad that you put that reference sheet together for your front desk. That makes total sense to me on because you want to have, I think again the key for like to stop drop off in the clinic is to match the right patient with the right therapist from the start, and then you're going to get a great outcome. And everybody's has their nuances, what they're good at, and what their kind of preferences are. And I remember from experience with some of our staff, like if you put a particular patient on with someone who was not that skilled in that particular area, like there was a frustration from the therapist, right? And you keep doing that long enough, they're going to get out of there, right?
And we all have interests, right? Like if it's a difference if you're just not, I would feel if you're not educated enough in it, then hey, maybe that's what you should take a course in, right? But if it's something that you're not interested in, then it's like, hey, like I don't really, you know, the patient would also be better served by that, but then like I need to be invested in your care to do well too, right? And you know, you've got to see what your not necessarily limitation is, but like, you know, it's putting away your own bias of like, I don't really like treating this. Well, then if you give it to me, then that's not going to go well for anybody.
Absolutely. And so I'm curious for you, as you've had great expansion here, and you've put a lot of amazing systems. And I'm curious, what do you say is next for you and for Anatomy Physio?
The easy answer is to stay tuned. Don't worry too much. Um, I think my standard answer now, because people ask in the last couple of years, because it's like, okay, well, you built up to 4. Do you want more? Do you not? And, you know, I can still fit another one in a handful. But you don't know. I think right now, the target in the last few years, we did a lot of changes as we've outlined here, and it's worked really well for us. And I'm very happy with the clinics, how they are. And I think attracting the clinicians that we have, and I really enjoy our team right now. And, you know, to make sure that the clinics are built out to their capacity, which 2 are approaching their capacity. One is, you know, past halfway, one is at halfway. Um, you know, that's great. And they don't need to be bigger, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
For that, like that's
Smart.
good, and
Very smart.
it's done well, and there isn't more capacity. There's not more room there, right? So then, is it another location? Is it acquisition? You never know. Or is it? There's always that kind of like, you know, be happy with that and try to enjoy life, you know, at the same time. And
Hmm.
you know, if you're starting this business, for example, like in a marketing company, like you've got the first few years are challenging. Like you've got to put a lot of time, a lot of effort, and until you recruit the right people. And even if you do, like those people do change. And, you know, we're always trying to promote new leaders and that stuff. And eventually maybe they go and lead their own team. And, you know, fair enough, right? But is there something I can do for retention? Maybe, but maybe not. And just kind of building the clinics that we have to their full potential is always going to be there, right? But a couple of them are pretty close. And then, you know, if we decide to do more, great. If we don't, like, I can definitely say I'm happy with that. But how else do I, you know, what else do I want to do, right?
Right.
So, am I still teaching or doing other things like that? Yet, you know, your first kind of, or my first, you know, love as a physio is still being a clinician, right? I still like to do my hands-on, get my brain thinking like that. But the other part of me, and that's the entrepreneurial part, is more just like we explained at the beginning, or I explained at the beginning. I'd prefer to make more of an impact, and I can't do that alone.
Yeah.
So the more people I can train and train well, and at least if they're under the anatomy umbrella, and even if they're not, at least I know that they're helping people in what I would hope would be a good way, that they're doing that, because I'm, you know, frankly over modality based clinics and not good stuff. Like I don't want to hear bad things about the profession, right? I don't care what profession it is. Like hopefully you go to healthcare, for me, obviously allied health more, and you have a good experience and you have a clinician that's into it, wants to do it, and wants to expand their knowledge, then that's what I'm looking for. And then if I can have that as a clinician as a growth, well, then that's easy for anatomy to grow.
Yeah.
And but then helping that out, and then is it go beyond Ottawa? Maybe we'll see.
Is that something you found gave you a kind of an edge in your community, being so manual based? Like people want to come in because you do have you know, clinicians that are more skilled and hands on. It's not just, you know, a lot of modality type clinics.
I mean, we definitely want that, right, for modalities, but it's, you know, a lot of clinics do manual therapy, right?
Right.
So that's not the only thing that sets clinics apart. You know, maybe I would say 20 or 30 years ago, going into that kind of part, sure it does. But I think that it's really tough actually. The market is like, you're doing manual therapy, but we're trying to promote good clinical practice, and how we would tell it, it would be clinical reasoning, right? So, you know, your therapist is going to work with you to help find out kind of what's going on with you, and then use the appropriate treatment techniques, which is going to be telling you what kind of the process is, and then working with exercises, working with their probably hands-on or manual therapy, because manual therapy to people is just like, well, what is that? Like, it's massage, we're just massaging, like, but that's not for me. It's like, we're not doing that, right? It's different things, right? So kind of just usually using hands-on versus manual therapy approach. But even then, like a lot of clinics do that just to what extent, right? So that's one kind of thing, right? We kind of use the terms right now in teaching of like, you've got your education and advice, exercise, manual therapy, and then other. So maybe it is a modality, taping, needling, whatever it is. So EMO, but EMO. And that's kind of that process that we're doing.
Okay. I I think what you said earlier really struck me too. It's sort of the conundrum that we do hear from this transition as a practice owner, right? That you've grown to a certain level, you love the clinical aspect, you love the treating aspect, but then you also have this entrepreneurial bug, and the business has certain demands of you, and it's sort of this transition where, okay, I can't do both fully, right? So it's interesting to hear from you on that, and given you're such a strong educational background in teaching and all these kind of things too. Um, yeah, what you said too was very smart. I want to just reemphasize this because I think our audience, especially multi-location clinic owners, because I've seen this happen so many times, in that you're very smart in saying, okay, we need to make sure that as we're spinning up some of these other clinic locations, that they reach their potential before we go further, because that's the quickest way to kill your practice. Is you equate in your mind that more clinic locations means success, but you can run these clinic locations and you can have two or three that are losing money, and you've got one or two that are making money, and so it's just a strain. And I've seen so many clinic owners where they'll get into a pinch because they expanded too fast, and they didn't get the enough treatments and enough revenue from those clinic locations. So you're super smart in what you were saying there, in that you need to make sure that those clinics are going to grow and be at capacity or close to capacity before you're thinking of what else you want to do.
Yeah, and just that last little piece to add on to that is that you can't really do it alone either, right? Because if I am expanding into these things that I like to do, I have less time for certain things. And that was a big switch that we did, like making sure for me, I kind of knew after I was expanded past two, because those were the first two I started on my own. The third one, I was like, I don't think I can do another one alone, right? So bringing
Right.
in a partner or two, but then also having a clinic director, and yeah, you got to pay them. But the thing is that they're going to give you that back in time, right?
Right.
And so now those extra few hours a week that they're doing, I have that back to do a podcast today, or to go and do a 3-hour lecture at the university, or
Right.
something like that, right? Or to, work with my clinicians. I've got to plan these clinical education sessions. I've got to think about what I'm actually doing, or I'm going to attend conferences like our International Federation IFOMT and we were just in Switzerland in 2024. Or I'm going to the Canadian conferences every 2 years. So that last one was in Kelowna, and then we're going to Montreal in 2 years, But if I'm the one who's going to them, then I'm trying to bring back that knowledge as well, right? But then at the same time, going through, and every time I'm teaching, I always kind of look, and you look at the articles that you're reading or have read, let's say, and you're like, right, that's like 2015, but this is 10 years from now, right? And they're putting references of 2023, 2025, that type of stuff, and just making sure you're keeping up to date, right? So that's can't do it alone. Got to keep up to date, and then build your clinicians out,
Yeah.
and success. If they're successful, then I'm
Mhm.
successful, right? So
Well, congratulations on your success. I mean, what you were just saying there is what I think a lot of practice owners would love to aspire to, where you've built enough systems in place in your practice, and you have people that you can trust and that you've built in there that can run the practice without you having to be there 24/7, so that you can have those opportunities. You love education, you love learning, and bringing that back to your team, so you can go to these conferences, right? You can go train, you can go teach. That's what you want out of your practice, right? You want to have the abilities, the freedoms to do these kind of things, so that your business can run at times without you, right? And that's just, I mean, kudos to you for building that, in your physio clinic. I really admire that.
maybe another last thing that I could say is that, well, it wasn't asked directly. If like in this stuff, it's systems and it's helping, and they're going to do it. But the other thing is that, like, we did have, like, let's say a lot of these things we kind of said, like I put in 3 years ago. It's been 6 years, right? So you kind of learn that it's like, oh, I can't do this alone. I do need help. But something like, practice promotions, for example, like I'm not a website designer. I don't know the back ends. Google's changing things all the time, right? I can't keep up with those updates, right? How am I doing my Google ads? These things, right? So that stuff is still stuff that you need to be able to do. And if you can't do it, then find someone who can, right? And then building that into the practice, just, every layer that you can do for those things, you're still going to learn and change things, sure, but you've got to have those things in place to build out, right? So because you build up and then you kind of stall, right? And that's like, hey, what can I change, right? Okay, do I have my marketing team ready to go, right? That's not usually something you can get internally unless you've got a physio or a whoever that knows that stuff. You can't, right?
Yeah. Wonderful advice there. And it's something that I say all the time, is that as you grow as a business, yes, there's things that you do internally, you need help and support and need to find the right people internally. But even for us too, as we've grown, heck, even as a marketing agency, we rely on different, specialists to help support our business. And that's just something as you grow, you see, and you're totally right there in that you need to work with people who are experts in those particular areas, whether it's billing, whether it's marketing, operations, clinical education. Like there's lots and lots of different resources and companies out there, and you realize that you start off small, you do it all yourself, but then as you grow, it's like, I need help, right?
And I do get that, because at the same time when you're starting off, it's like, well, if you're already starting off in the red, then how are you getting out of there, right? And is the answer going more in the red? It happens to be probably, but there is a limit, right? And then sometimes you want to do a certain thing, but they're asking for X amount of thousands of dollars, and you just can't do that for the first 6 months, or maybe you can, but the other thing you've got to hold off on. But that I think it depends on a lot of things and where you are. There's a lot of things there.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Andrew, you've given us amazing insights today. Congratulations on all your success and leveraging your educational expertise, showing us how you've done that with your therapist internally, how you put in these systems with your front desk and your marketing, and how that's really just helped you, fuel your growth. Congratulations on your success. Thank you for sharing with us here today. Yeah. And so to all our listeners out there, thank you for being on the Practice Marketing Podcast. We hope you got a lot out of today's podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast here, as well as on our YouTube channel, where you'll see these videos of our podcast, as well as other trainings that we do. And at practicepromotions.net, you'll find tons of downloads and free tips and advice to help you level up the marketing in your practice. So this is Neil Trickett from the Practice Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
A free way for you to support our show is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's a chance for you to tell us what you love about the show, and it helps others discover it as well. Just scroll down to ratings and review on your phone and click write a review. Thanks.